So it's my pleasure to welcome you to Northern Kentucky History Hour. Like I said before, my name is Mary Jane Calderon, and I am joining you from the Education Center at Behringer-Crawford Museum. Also joining me is my co-host, BCM Curator of Collections, Jason French. So thank you, Jason, for being here. Northern Kentucky History Hour is a project of Behringer-Crawford Museum, Northern Kentucky's History Museum, that would not be possible without support. Thank you to all of our sponsors, including the City of Covington, Kenton County Fiscal Court, ArtsWave, Kentucky Arts Council, Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame, and our members. If you're not yet a member of the museum, please consider joining for access to discounts and exclusive programming. Learn more and join at bcmuseum.org. Now, a reminder before we get started, we love participation from our viewers. We want your questions. So please type any questions or comments you have in the chat or the Q&A feature, and I will be sure to get to those at the end of the presentation. Now, the fun part, this is our trivia question. So tonight's question is, what was Jim Bunning's campaign slogan when he first ran for governor in Kentucky? So you can go ahead and get those answers in the chat. And we are going to stop for one moment. We're going to stop sharing. And we are going to turn this over to Mr. French here a little bit and let him introduce some of our guests that we have here.
Well, we are honored to have a number of distinguished individuals with us tonight that all have their own Jim Bunning experiences. Next to me here is Joe Brennan, the President Emeritus of the Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame. And to his left is Mr. Rick Robinson, who, of course, spent a lot of time working campaigns with Jim and kind of grew up with Jim a little bit, didn't you?
He was already grown up,
Well,
I grew up a little bit more. Yes.
You grew up a little bit more, and from well, almost to Louisville down there, we've got Rex Morgan with us, and Rex is a tremendous Jim Bunning collector, and he really helped us create the exhibit that we had from the Mound to the Hill, and it was his exhibit that we were honored to display here at the Behringer-Crawford Museum several years back, and that exhibit inspired us to create what we're going to be seeing here in a little bit.
Yeah, say hi, Rex.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
So everyone can see you. He is joining us virtually on Zoom, but we're glad to have him. So I wanted to, before we get started with the film, I wanted to go through what how this first story, you mentioned that we had an exhibit. So how did that exhibit come to be, and how did we first get involved with the whole Jim Bunning story?
Well, as I remember it, Rex had reached out to us, and he had spent a number of years. How many years were you collecting, Rex? You'd started when you were in the service, correct?
Yeah, I began right about the time that the center was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1996, and then I started contacting the museum around 2019, 2020, and I think it was 2021 whenever I came up and met with you as a curator, and we planned out the exhibit that we had on display.
Yeah, that's so that exhibit was such a tremendous exhibit with so many treasures related to Jim's experience, both as a ball player and his political career, that we wanted to be able to tell that story year round, but we're a small museum and a limited amount of space. So we thought that we would try our best to create the film that you're going to see now so that we could put it up for people to enjoy and learn about Jim at their leisure whenever they could. So we were pretty excited about that. With all film projects, there are interesting hurdles that sometimes you don't anticipate. And there was a lot of learning curve for us here at the museum, but we're really proud of the end product. As we were proud of the exhibit that we had and really getting to know the people involved in new ways. So of course, the gentlemen next to me have wonderful Bunning stories as well, and some of those come out a little bit in the film. Others they've kept, and maybe we'll tell a little of those after the film, some too.
And what is it like for you to finally see this? You said it took several years to put together, finally come together.
You know, it's very rewarding at the end of a project to kind of see it. Sometimes you're not sure what the vision is going to be. Sometimes you'll create something, you've got a clear outline. Other times you just start at it and the story kind of unfolds as you learn more. And the Bunning documentary was one of those where I just started asking questions, and we just started talking to people and seeing what they had, and we were able to craft the film around the narratives and the stories that we got, and really make it concise and do what we were trying to go for in the film itself. And certainly with all things, when you're telling someone's story, you're telling the story of a life, we could have made it longer. We could have added a lot to it. There's so many stories, and the amount of time that we had to tell it, to make it short and sweet and concise, we had to leave things out that we loved the stories. There were other stories that we just couldn't get. There were people that I wanted to talk to, and I didn't have the opportunity.
Okay, well, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share the film. So I am going to share my screen again. One moment.
How do you tell the story of a man? Is it talent, fame, career, or family? When speaking about James Paul David Bunning, or Jim Bunning as he was known, it's all of these and so much more. Jim Bunning was born October 23rd, 1931 in Covington, Kentucky. Raised in Southgate, he was definitely a Northern Kentucky kid. Jim even met the love of his life in elementary school. He went on to attend Xavier High School in Cincinnati and got an economics degree at Xavier University. But instead of me telling you all of this, let's hear it from the people who knew him best.
Tremendous individual, and he makes you think of so many things that you actually not really thought about it before, but once you get off the game and start thinking about the accomplishments of all of the gentlemen that you play with, one that really stands out without a doubt is Mr. Jim Bunning.
Jim was a good pitcher, and he was a workhorse. He signed his baseball contract when he was a junior in college. Now, probably you know this, but he had to get his parents to sign for him, with him, because he was underage. And he had to promise his mom and dad that he would finish his his college before he would, play professional baseball. So he missed spring training for, the first 3 years, I guess it was.
He was a great player, a great pitcher. He pitched boldly. He was a winner everywhere he went. He competed, and he tried to win. He was a winner. And can you see the guy out there in the pitching mound, and he's he looking at you, and you looking at him, and you know when the pitch is tough, and you know when you have to bear down and try your best, because he really wants to beat you out, and that was Jim Bunning.
Everybody knew who Jim Bunning was. He was a legend in baseball, Hall of Famer, and a hard-nosed ball player like a Bob Gibson, I mean, when they were in the mound, they threw with everything that you had. And they worked hard, they threw complete games compared to what they do now. Like I know Gibson at one time might have had 24 wins, and I think 18 or 19 were complete games, and I think Jim was same type of pitcher.
I loved going to the ball games. We got something to eat at specific innings. And when Dale would pitch, it was really awesome, but when he would hit, it was even more awesome. And I do remember him hitting a home run in Red Stadium once, and we all stood on our chairs and were just hollering.
1964 on Father's Day, it was June 21st. I think being the oldest, you had a few privileges, and one of them was I got to go to that game with my mom. I remember driving up from New Jersey. I think we were living in Cherry Hill, New Jersey at the time, and we went up there. It was the first game of a doubleheader. In New York at that time, the World's Fair was going on. Well, my dad pitched the perfect game. It was amazing. My mom and I were saying, not the Rosary, but Our Fathers and Hail Marys there at the end, because you'd think, being 11 years old, I wouldn't be that much of a baseball fan, but I was, and I knew more statistics probably than any boy at the time. I love baseball. I could name everybody on the team. We were down to the last out, and then the amazing thing was, in the end, the Mets fans at Shea Stadium, I think that was either their first or second season. They were a very new team, but they were cheering for my dad. I mean, that was history to be witnessed.
Jim Bunning is now one strike from a perfect ball game. How do you stay cool and how do you stay poised in a spot like this? The crowd is standing. Slugging out, a perfect game for Jim Bunning. Here come his teammates. Oh, what a happy...
But my dad was asked that night. He was so happy, sweating, but so happy. And we got to go to the Ed Sullivan show that night, sitting in the audience, and that was amazing.
I can remember during the perfect game, we were swimming in a pool, and I can just remember being rushed out of the pool to go get all dressed up so that we could be in all these pictures, and I didn't quite understand what was going on at the time. But I just knew it was important, and it was a lot of fun.
Gift that you can give any great player to accomplish what is probably one of the most difficult things to do in baseball as a pitcher is a perfect game, and he did definitely, and continue to be doing what you are very proud of him is the way he go out every day to put that uniform on and give you 150% all the time. With him in the mound, you had a chance to win. You can talk about Jim Bunning, all day long and all night long, because of those ways that he had, that possesses that intimidation type thing that we talked about on the mound. He never gave up. He would walk into the dugout, and you were just 2 runs down now because they scored 2 off of Jim, but he'll come over, throw the glove on the bench and say, well, boys, you better start working now because no, they're not going to score anymore. So give me some runs. And that's the way he was, and everybody just start listening the way he goes about, his business. And when he said it, he meant it, no question about it, because that was his business. He never fool around or mess around. And let's play baseball, and they play it the right way. And when you see a gentleman like Jim Bunning, you start looking at his records. Well, he's a man that won 100 games in each, the National and the American League. He is a Hall of Famer.
A good candidate is lanky Jim Bunning, with all the pitching talent anyone could need for immortality.
He also really always his career, he did not make it to the World Series. But I remember in 1964, he had been traded to the Phillies, and the Phillies were doing awesome. Back then, there were only 2 teams that made the pennant, the National League and the American League. There wasn't all this playoff stuff. And my dad would tell you too. Back there, a pitcher was a pitcher. He started every 4th or 5th day. They didn't count pitches and they didn't count the speed. You pitched till the end of the game unless, you got hit in the face with a ball or something. And my dad was tough like that and proud of it.
And all the people were so sweet and kind to us in Philadelphia. We were treated like royalty there. And they presented us with all these gifts and we got to go out on the field. And it was just fun. We just, you always felt special and we had just such a fun time.
But that season, we already had tickets to the World Series. My parents had them framed in their basement. And unfortunately, the Phillies lost something like 10 games in a row at the end of that year. But on the last day of the season, my dad did beat the Reds. Unfortunately, the Cardinals beat the Atlanta Braves, and so the Cardinals won the pennant.
He was great. I mean, he was a hard-nosed manager too. He wanted you to work just as hard as he expected his players to work. But he was fair and firm. I had not met him personally till I was in the Eastern League, which is AA minor league baseball. And he was the manager of Reading, the Phillies AA team. And they were playing in Quebec City, which was the Expos team. Came up to home plate and he said, "Randy Marsh from Covington, Kentucky. I've never met anybody that's umpired in professional baseball from Covington, Kentucky." I said, "Yes, sir, that's me." When they went to Sherbrooke, we were supposed to umpire the games in Sherbrooke. And he brought his team into Sherbrooke, and their team was supposed to stay at this rickety old hotel. And he got so upset about it, he wouldn't have his players live in a place like that. He yanked them all out of the hotel. Went and found another hotel to put them in. And I guarantee you, the Phillies just went along with whatever he wanted to do. He was doing what was right. And like I say, I had him in the Eastern League there, and he was fair but firm, but he let you umpire. He was always nice. He could be sarcastic. When John McSherry, who was the umpire that passed away in Cincinnati years ago, when he was in the minor leagues, he got a call during spring training that there was going to be a B game, and Jim Bunning was going to get a couple of extra innings in to pitch the game, and John's rushing like heck to get there. This is a big deal for a minor league guy to get the big league game of Jim Bunning. So the first pitch he throws, John calls it a ball, and Jim stood on the mound and goes, "Well, there went your perfect game."
It was when Dad was managing Toledo Mud Hens in, obviously, Toledo. And he didn't like us to wait where all the fans waited. He wanted us to wait by the car. He was driving, I remember, a red, kind of maroon Eldorado Cadillac with a white interior. And he always parked close to the stadium, same place every night. So we go out there and a foul ball had hit the windshield and it was broken, and the ball was right there on the side of the car. So we're standing there, it was myself and two of my brothers. So we're like going, I'm not telling him, like he wouldn't see it himself. So we're standing there waiting. He was always like one of the last ones out. So we were waiting, and finally he comes out and he looks at the ball and he looks at the windshield and he just says, "Get in the car." So we did, we got in the car. So he got the windshield fixed. He did not learn his lesson. So the windshield was fixed, he drove back, parked at the same place, same night. First night he drove that car back from when the windshield was broken. We got out there and there was a foul ball with a broken windshield again. So I looked at my brothers, I said, I think I'm walking home. He came out, did the same thing. Looked at the ball, looked at the windshield, said, "Get in the car." But he did learn, he did not park there anymore. And that was pretty funny.
Jim Bunning made the transition from baseball into politics seem natural.
Then after baseball, we came home and our city council person wanted Jim to run for city council. And we never thought anything about doing that. But we prayed about it and decided that we wanted to give something back to the community. So we ran, and he won. And he got more votes than the mayor. So that was the first time he was in public office. And then it was our state senator. I don't want to mention him. Well, he's in heaven now. But anyway, he switched parties so he could get a leadership role in Frankfurt, and Jim didn't like that too much. So he ran for that seat and won. And then he was the head of the Senate in Frankfurt because he persuaded 7 other senators to vote for him. Okay, so then we had another time that Gene Schneider was going to retire. So we prayed again, and there we got into the Senate, the House, with the House of Representatives. And then we were there for 12 years, and then Wendell Ford was going to retire, and we had so many people, presidents calling Jim, and I thought, what are they calling about? So we ran for the Senate, and you know the story there. So he was the senator for 2 terms, 12 years, and then he was home, which is wonderful because the kids, it was a wonderful mellowing time.
One day, Jim walks in and did something he rarely did with me. He looked at me and he said, tossed me the car keys. He said, will you drive me down the White House? He never really did that. And I hadn't looked at the schedule to see what was on, so I thought I was just going to drive down. And this was the day where there was a lane right next to the White House and you just parked there. So if you remember Congress, you would have your little license plate that you put on it. So we jumped in the car, I drive him down the White House, we pull into the parking space, and I'm figuring I'm just going to wait for him. And as we're sitting there, he goes, no, come on in. I want you to come in with me. I hadn't been cleared or anything, and I told that. He said, just walk in like you own the place. You're with me, we're fine. So we walk in, we go through the White House, we go through the East Wing, out into the Rose Garden, where George Bush 41, H.W. Bush, was having a Rose Garden ceremony for Ted Williams and Joe DiMaggio. And so here I am, a kid from Ludlow, Kentucky, sitting in the Rose Garden of the White House with Jim Bunning, Ted Williams, Joe DiMaggio, and George Herbert Walker Bush, which is not a bad day for a kid from Ludlow.
But I got to know Jim Bunning more in the political realm. In 1997, I ran in the U.S. Senate race as Lieutenant Governor. I was able to still do that. And he was involved in that race as well. And so you always knew with Jim Bunning what you were getting. He didn't change. It's not like politicians that we have today that put their finger up in the wind and decide how they're going to vote on something based on the political trends. Jim Bunning knew who he was, what he was about. He won an election. He won that Senate race, and no one was going to change Jim Bunning. And so I think it was frustrating to people on the left, perhaps, that he was not the type that would change that much. And so I think he was true to his word. I think that's one of the things that people say about him. You knew where he stood. He was elected by the people of Kentucky, and he was going to represent those people, and that meant certain times he wasn't going to compromise. And so I think he was true to his word, and he wasn't pliable based on the blowing of the wind.
First off, what a lot of people don't realize about Jim was that his degree was in economics from Xavier. And he had quite his own opinions on how the economy should be going and what the Fed should be doing. Some of the great housing committee hearings, Jim was on the Banking, Housing, and Finance Committee when he first got up there. And I can remember every time Greenspan would come in, he and Alan Greenspan would just go head to head on differences on the economy, on inflation, on things of that nature, and it always used to surprise people that the old right-handed baseball pitcher knew so much about the economy and could actually hold his own with somebody like Alan Greenspan in a debate.
A lot of my memories about my dad are involved in his time in the House and in the Senate. And if you would never meet anyone that was a more fierce advocate than he was.
Easiest decision I ever made was to say yes to the offer to work for Jim Bunning. And he was a true public servant. He was tenacious, very bold, matter of fact, blunt. He was a fighter, and we needed that, and he fought for families.
Senator Bunning wanted to offer an amendment that would create a fund that would help the workers who had been injured at the Paducah plant in Paducah, Kentucky. And at the time, Senator Ted Kennedy, who is about as opposite on the political spectrum as you could get, was also interested in that, and he wanted to support the amendment. So when we came to the markup, the time for Senator Bunning to offer the amendment, and it was closed session, so all the senators 25 senators on the committee and their staff were all packed into this room, and Senator Bunning says, I want to offer the Bunning-Kennedy amendment, and the chairman at the time, Senator John Warner from Virginia, just said, wait a minute, the what? The Bunning-Kennedy amendment? You guys both agree on this? There were 2 minutes of jokes about the Bunning-Kennedy amendment, and they said, yeah, you don't need to explain it, we'll take it, it's fine. If you guys agree, that's all we need to know.
So appreciated his willingness to stick to what he believed in, regardless of if you're gonna get some flack. And one of the first times that I really experienced that, we had an adopted son from Korea. I can remember he had a lot of special needs, and I can remember being concerned at one point about getting him naturalized so that there would be no chance of anything ever happening to him. And we lived in Dallas at the time, and I went to the immigration place and tried to be a part of that process, and it was so difficult. And I remember calling my dad in Washington and how wonderful he was to connect me with the right people in Texas so that we could get help getting Sam naturalized, which was wonderful. He promoted legislation that had to do with adoption, which was wonderful.
I'm from Cuba, and they know what happened in Cuba with the communists and Castro and the stuff, and I left Cuba. And in 1963, I didn't come back after 10 years to see my family again. And then I come back, I see my family, and then I try to get my family come here to see me. And what else? And we called Jim Bunning, and he helped me. He got my mother and my 3 sisters in here. In the United States, they came down and met my sons and my wife, and there was a great time, and I always been grateful to him for what he did and what nothing. We call him, he say, right away, Tony. I mean, I would like to help you, and he did. And I got my family, but a few years later, he helped us again, and my family came back again, and then we got that relation going, and then when we both made it to the Hall of Fame, well, he made it before me. When then I got there, we were talking, and I thanked him for that, and that was great. I mean, a guy who play against you, battle like we did, and I never play in the same team. I play against them, and come back and you call him, and he help you. I mean, when I hear he passed away, it hurt me. I mean, a guy who help you with your family pass away. It's like a family pass away for me. And that's how I feel about Jim Bunning.
Always felt like I had someone that I could call and talk to, and at least have a voice in Washington and a concern that we shared together, and really our whole family.
And he said he could take the heat because he had stood alone on the mound and been booed by 60,000 people. So he was a man of great principle. When he believed something strongly, he never wavered. And he was one of the most inspirational people I've met in my life. A Hall of Famer not only in baseball, but in life.
Jim and I liked each other in the 4th and 5th grade. I went to St. Therese School with him, and I liked him the whole time, all through high school. I ended up and married Jim when I was 19 and he was 20.
I married a gal I met in the 4th and 5th grade. I was a 5th grader, she was a 4th grader. And we dated, well, we didn't date, but because our father was a little more strict than I was when I was a papa. And we dated off and on all through high school. And finally, when I graduated high school, we really got to date each other then. And by the sophomore year in college, we got married. She was 19 and I was 20. And we proceeded to reel off 9 children in 13 years.
I never had a new coat because I had 2 older sisters. Always had hand-me-downs, but he took me shopping all by myself downtown Cincinnati and picked me out a really pretty red coat and took me to get ice cream. We have some fun memories of him, especially with my grandkids, especially the later years of his life, the last 6 years. We really got to know him, and he knew my grandkids, and they loved him very dearly. And you get to see a side of him that we never saw growing up because he softened a lot over his age, and he just was so loved the children. He really did, and they have special memories now, and I'm grateful for that.
A wonderful memory for me was I got to sing the national anthem at the Hall of Fame, so that was wonderful. That's fun. And I just really appreciate that value of when you believe something wholeheartedly, that no matter what kind of negative feedback you're getting or influence, that you'll stand firm to what you believe. So that's the one characteristic of my dad that I really believe in, and I think he taught us well.
You know, we thought of our dad as our dad. We didn't really think of him as somebody famous, and you know, but it really afforded us as children so many opportunities that we had, and you know, grateful for and happy, and just a lifetime of memories.
May 26th, 2017, Jim Bunning left us. He was a talented baseball player. Inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, his career spanned sports and state and national politics. He was a devoted husband, father, and grandfather. James Paul David Bunning, or Jim Bunning. That is the story of a man.
Okay, so now I'm going to check and see, since I was unable to look at the chat. We do have a comment. I don't see any trivia answers, so I don't know if anybody's got a trivia answer for that question. I'm going to go ahead and repeat it just in case somebody has the answer. That question again was, I'm sorry, it was, what was the first slogan that was used
when he ran for governor?
Yes.
Yes.
So go ahead and see if anyone knows that. Go ahead and get that answer in the trivia. But Donna did comment, Jim Bunning got a friend of her sons out of a very bad situation in the Navy in the 1980s. They were forever grateful. So thank you so much for sharing, Donna. But I want to turn now and discuss more about the relationships that you guys have had with either with Jim, working with Jim, or on working on this documentary. So I'll go ahead and turn this over to you guys here, and I'm going to close this. Go ahead, Mr. French.
So, you both, as well as Rex in there, you've all had relationships with Jim. And when I was making the film, I, of course, was coming at it with the fact that I had never had the opportunity to meet the man. And I was learning about him through conversations with others. So what were some of the things that in the conversations you had with him, the moments that you had with Jim that meant the most to any of the three of you? What was special that you will remember the most about your time with Jim?
Well, personally, I've had a lot of dealings through the Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame with Jim, but on a personal side, my brother was a priest, and he was at St. Thomas, and he was one of the three priests that married Jim and his wife at St. Therese. And I met Jim at a public function, and he looked at me and he said, "Are you a Brennan?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "What's your name?" And I told him, and he says, "Your brother Tom married me and my wife." And I said, "You're not going to hold that against me, are you?" And he said, "No." He said, "That was the best day of my life." And then since then, I used to go Bill Capel. All of our sports people know him. I used to take Bill to lunch all the time once I retired from the railroad. And Bill would all the time, about once every month, I take him every week. About once a month, he'd pull out a letter or card that he had. And I said, "What are you doing now?" And he says, this goes with what Mr. Robinson was saying. He says, "I'm writing Jim Bunning." And I says, "What about?" He said, whatever the issue was, economics and that. And I says, "Does he ever answer you back?" He says, "Yeah, all the time." Well, to go back, when Bill's 90th birthday, Jim Bunning got Bill Capel a day at the United States in the Senate. He got a plaque and that, and inducted him in the Capitol up there. And that's how close they were. But Bill and them were really good friends. And the other thing about Jim, what I like to point out, is I have a picture here. I don't know if you can see it or not.
I can try holding it up here.
But that was Jim Bunning. He was a guest speaker when we had our Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame exhibit, Reach for the Stars. And that exhibit featured 70 of the top athletes in Northern Kentucky, Boone, Kenton, and Campbell County. And you either had to be in the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, the Olympics or something. And of course, Jim was in it. And he agreed to be our guest speaker. And the date on this was April the 5th of 2008. It was a Saturday. And you can see he's wearing glasses. And I was sitting next to him when they're getting ready to make the presentations out in the patio right here. And he had a real bad allergy at the time, his eyes and that. And I said, "You don't look like you're feeling too good, Jim." And he said, "No." He said, "I don't." He says, "In fact," he says, "I didn't fly in last night." He said, "I had to fly in this morning. And I got to go back out first thing in the morning, back to Washington." This was when he was a senator. And I said, "Are you feeling that bad?" I said, "You shouldn't have came." I said, "We could have got somebody else." And he said, "No." He said, "I gave my word." And he says, "The people you're bringing in here today, they're looking forward to me being here." And he said, "I gave you my word I was going to be here, and I'm here." So when he got up, he kept his glasses and that on so people couldn't see how bad his eyes and that were. But that's just the kind of a guy he was. That he was down to earth, and if he gave you his word, he's going to do it. He's going to do it.
You know, that really is symbolic of the legacy of Jim Bunning. is that there were certain truths and certain things that he had. I mean, when you went in and told him on a vote that, you know, there were 3 rules. If it was anti-communist, we were for it. If it was more of an increase on his spending than the rate of inflation the year before, if we're telling him we ought to vote for it, we better have a darn good reason. You know, and the one thing that really comes through with all of those things that were going on, I continually have people walk up to me and tell me stories about Jim. And recently I heard one that I had never heard before from Rob Braun. And it goes to the story of what kind of guy he was. And, you know, aside from all the sin and everything, Jim got very involved in fighting with the Contras down in Nicaragua and fighting against communism. The communist takeover that was happening at the time. Kenton County JCs went out and raised a whole bunch of medical supplies to take down to the Catholic Church down there. Rob Braun takes a crew, producer, cameraman himself, and they go to Nicaragua. Well, they're in this, Rob just told me this last month. They're walking down the street and they're filming and everything else, and suddenly they take on fire. They grab the people there that are doing the trip, grab them, take them into a safe house, and Rob, his producer and director, obviously they're not members of Congress, they have to duck down behind a wall, and Rob says he's hearing bullets go over his head, he's hearing them hit the wall, and all of a sudden he said I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, this is it. I am not going to live past today. And all of a sudden, some guy comes running out, hovering under the fire, and says, "Follow me." And he goes, "We're just the camera guys." He goes, "Congressman Bunning just told me to come out and get you and bring you back inside. And if I didn't have you with me, I wasn't allowed back in." He said, "So here we go running under fire once again, going over our heads, and Bunning's at the door pulling us all in." But that's the kind of giant guy Jim was. You know, I mean, you know, and I tell that story because I actually ask around to everybody on staff. He never told that story to anybody. And I think the reason was because if Mary would have found out, she wouldn't let him go back the next time. But it was, in fact, you know, that's the kind of guy Jim was. Jim was just a stand-up guy.
What about you, Rex? Do you got any stories of your interactions with Jim that stand out, that you remember and that you'd like to share?
Yes, a few. I got to travel with first of all to Philadelphia when they honored Jim for the 50th anniversary of his perfect game, Father's Day 2014. And then I also got to travel to Cooperstown to the Hall of Fame, August 2016, which was just short of when he had his stroke. And they got me VIP credentials, so I hung out with Jim and Mary on the veranda of the hotel there at Cooperstown, where all the Hall of Famers used to hang out. And they were just so courteous. We would be sitting, eating or whatever, and another Hall of Famer would come up, like Brooks Robinson, and Jim and Mary would, introduce me like I was somebody important. They treated me like one of their children, and I loved them dearly for it. Probably the most intimate and sentimental memories I have about my interaction is after Jim had his stroke, and for a few months before he actually passed away. I was off. I didn't work on Fridays, and I would go up there and I would sit with him, and we would sit in little sitting room in their home, and we would talk about previous teams, and we got to interact quite a bit. And I would go up there every Friday, and I'd stop and bring some sweet rolls for him, and I guess he liked those sweet rolls. But in 2006, I think it was, Mary hosted a fundraising event at the Florence Ballpark and raised money for a St. Elizabeth hospice. And then it was almost roughly 10 years later, that's where the senator was whenever he passed away. And I was actually in the room with a lot of the kids and all just a few hours before he passed away. So like I said, of all the great things and interactions that I had with Jim and Mary and the family, I think the intimate time that I spent with the senator right before his passing means the most to me.
It was great to watch a ball game with him.
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah, you could sit. We would go down. He'd give a call and he'd say, can you take me down the ball game, whatever else. We go down. They give us seats, right on home plate. And I was always amazed at how he knew the next pitch.
Mhm.
We'd be sitting there and he'd go, curveball outside the corner, slider, change up. Boom. I'm like, how do you know that?
Yeah.
And he said, him in the Hall of Fame, like, yeah, but it was just, I probably 80% of the time, he had the pitch called. He knew exactly what was coming next, and it was just so fun to watch a ball game with him.
How do you think that impacted his political career?
Well, it was wonderful because, everybody, when they would be having fundraisers, they would get this person or that person or the chairman of this committee to come in. When we were doing that, we would get Hall of Famers to come in and be part of the fundraiser. I mean, who wants to be with the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee when you can actually go to a fundraiser with Tommy Lasorda or Tony Perez, any of these guys that would come in, and it was so much fun. We sat at the Greyhound Grill one night with myself, Debbie McKinney was there, John Salyers was alive at the time we were there, and we had Tommy and Jim go around the diamond and give their thoughts on who the best player was at every position. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you got two Hall of Famers, and they're going to argue over who was a better catcher, Bill Dickey or Johnny Bench. And I mean, that was just, I just sat there in awe for, just listening to the conversation, just to be, a fly on the wall, listening to that.
Yeah, you brought up another person's in our Hall of Fame that, and I had nominated him for the Kentucky Veterans Hall of Fame, and he got in there with John Salyers.
John Dewey.
And John did a great job for our Hall of Fame. Of course, he's Jim's representative here, and every time we'd have a golf outing or a fundraiser, and that, all I had to do was call John and ask him if he could get Jim to sign a dozen balls. He'd autograph balls for us and everything. And
long as they're made in USA.
Yeah, but John,
if you bought one that was made in China,
yeah,
he might sign it for you. He might not, but in any event, he would give you the scowl.
Yeah, well, right there.
Why are you giving me a ball from China? He would give you knew you were in trouble on staff when you got the eyes overlooked.
Yeah, but we didn't have to buy the balls. That was a great part. John, they donated them to us.
Yeah.
He'd give us a dozen balls to donate. We'd get wrapped them that. Then the other thing he did, which I think he never really got any credit for, was he had an art contest for kids in Campbell County schools for artists, and he awarded like first, second, and third prize. And he did that for years over there.
Oh yeah.
And he awarded money and scholarships and stuff, and nobody ever talked about it or anything. But just all around, he was a great human being.
Jim was one of us.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a Northern Kentucky guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's his legacy. I mean, when you look at everything and people thinking of national politics, Jim's focus was here.
Well, you always know where he stood.
The earmark for the Behringer-Crawford Museum that did the expansion that they did, came from Jim. Jim always believed you didn't increase the budget, but once the budget was passed, every dime was fair game.
Yeah.
The first money that went into, we're finally getting around to building it. The first money that went into the bridge was Jim. Getting I think it was, and I remember it because Gary Tobin was chairman of the chamber, and we walked in and we thought we were going to do a big ask. We are going to ask for $2 million in some study funds. And Gary and I walked into the office and we told him what the ask was going to be. And I got the look. 2 million, Richard. We can't even get the paper printed for 2 million. I've got 50 million set aside. We'll take that.
Well, I wanted to add, Jason, you had a lot of famous baseball players that participated in this documentary. What was one of the most interesting things that you learned in those experiences working with or doing those interviews?
Kind of having the opportunity to interview some of Jim's acquaintances, other ball players. I couldn't have did any of that without Mary Bunning and without the family. But also it was really, I started to understand a little bit of his passion, and the stories about him, and the stories about, how he learned, I believe it was to throw the slider in Mexico. He played, back when he was playing, that you would go and you play to practice, or you didn't get paid that much, so you played winter ball somewhere. And as you kind of study baseball at that time, there were a lot of guys that would travel, play. He played in Cuba, he played in Mexico, and thanks to Rex's collection, we've got, images and a lot of kind of that history we can display when we talk about Jim. And in the exhibit, we had all of that out. But it was really interesting, his passion for it. I also thought it was, when he was in college, he had a basketball scholarship, so baseball was there, and but he was a basketball player. So that was interesting. Some of the early playing in the brewery leagues, the Buckeye League, and playing for the Bavarian team, or playing for some of the other local kind of brewery teams, even when he was still in high school. That was always kind of fun to kind of learn about as well. And then just interacting, all of the people that I got to meet and interview and talk to, they all had different stories about how he affected their life, what he did and how much he meant to them. And really, it's over the years, I've had an opportunity to meet a lot of interesting people working in the history field. And Bunning is one that I really wish I had time with. I think I would have really had a great time just talking to him and learning from him, because he was definitely a very, very interesting man of passion. He was tenacious. He could probably be gruff. I don't know. That was over the.
Gruff is not the word. One of the times, one of the kids came up to me and said, "What was it like to work for Dad?" And I said, "Well, here's what it was like. It's like we were the shortstop on the team, and Jim wasn't afraid to tell you if you booted a ball and made an error. You didn't want to get the look over the glasses." And I told I think it was Bill that asked me that, and I said, at times we may have been SOBs, but by God, we were his SOBs. We were on his team. He would have told Cookie Rojas, "What are you doing? You booted that ball." He told us when we made a mistake, and he made it clear. But we knew exactly what he wanted out of us. And that was 110%. Every day we came into work, he wanted out of us what he put into the mound every day when he appeared in the ball game.
And going into making this film, this documentary, I was trying to live up to what he would have wanted. As a museum, we were trying to build something to honor him in a way that he would have been okay with, down to, a film needs background music. Well, I knew that he loved Frank Sinatra. And My Way was his favorite song. But I can't afford, institutionally, we can't afford to get the rights for Sinatra songs to put in the background of the film. So we worked with professors at NKU to actually play jazz that was variations of some Sinatra tunes. And that's kind of in the background. And there's so many stories, stories about him and Mary having dinner in Cuba when he was playing, and the singer that was at the club that they were eating at, it was for their anniversary, I believe. It's the second or third anniversary. Mary had came down to Havana, and the singer found out that they were that was their anniversary, so he came and sang for them, and it was Nat Cole.
Yeah.
So there's those stories that, there were so many things that I wanted to have in the film, and to share that just we couldn't.
He would have approved.
Yeah.
He would have liked this. He didn't want his name on anything. He didn't like that whole idea of him. He would like this.
Yeah.
He would have enjoyed this.
Yeah,
He did a good job.
we did what we could. It was with any of these projects, they end up being more challenging than you anticipate. But in the end, I'm really proud of this, and institutionally, I think we've did our best to help tell that
One
story.
other thing I like to bring up is me and Charlie Coleman, we do life stories of people in our Hall of Fame. We give a copy to the museum. So far, we've done over 100 people. And Jim was one of them. And while we were interviewing him, he told me something I guess most people don't even know. But as you were saying, he went to Xavier University. And when he was in his first couple of years in the majors, they don't pay like they do now. And he came to Xavier University, came back to Xavier. In the wintertime, he was a basketball coach for the freshman team. And the first year he helped freshman basketball, it was back in the day, the NIT was bigger than the NCAA. That was your big tournament. But he wound up coaching Jimmy Booth, Dave Piontek, all the guys he coached when they were freshmen. When they were seniors, they won the NIT. And Xavier was like maybe 4,000 students, and they were beating all the big universities and everything. But they won the NIT, Jimmy Booth and all these guys. But he was the one that coached them in freshman, got them all together and got them playing.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah, but that's on our tape. Yeah.
Wow. I know we're just about we're actually over time a little bit. I know we had some technical glitches though, but you did have another photo here. I didn't know if this was something you wanted to share before we wrapped up.
The main thing was, this was Jim, the autographed it when he was with the Philadelphia Phillies. And that's his plaque when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And then also behind that is all the statistics that he has there. And basically, as I said before, I think he pitched 511 games and won 197 of them. In his whole career, he averaged 7 innings a game pitching. And these people now can't go 5. But when he completed 100,
unless you're Yamamoto.
Yeah, he completed 192 games out of 511. And he completed 192 and won 9 innings. And back then, the pitchers, you didn't have the designated hitter, so the pitcher had a bat. So about maybe a fourth of the games, they would be 1-0, or he might have even been winning like 2-1. But they took him out in the 7th inning, maybe for a pinch hitter, because it'd be a 1-run game, and they'd have 2 or 3 men on base. They wanted a pinch hitter, so they take the starting pitcher out, put the hitter in, and bring him. And that's how a lot of his were 7-inning games instead of 9. But he was like Bob Gibson. You didn't go out and take him off the mound. He never let you do it.
He definitely sounds like an amazing figure.
Yeah, Gene Mock called him, I think, 6'8" and whatever pounds of nothing but pride and sweat.
Right.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for sharing these wonderful stories and contributing to the documentary. I think it was, and great job, Jason, too.
Yeah, bravo Jason.
Wow.
That ended up being
Yeah.
wonderful.
It was definitely not just me.
But I do want to go back to that trivia question, which I did find here, which was, what was Jim Bunning's campaign slogan when he first ran for governor in Kentucky? And I'm going to check the chats. We had a guess. It was from the mound to the hill, but no, that is not correct. You were close to one answer I had, but it was actually on the mound for Kentucky. But you know what, Carol? Your answer was we're getting some thank yous, but you're the only answer we got. So guess what? You're our winner for tonight, Carol. So thank you for participating. Your prize will be coming in the mail. And we've got Barbara Bunning joining. She said, thanks from the Bunning family. Mom and many of us are watching. And we've got, thank you, great presentation. Well, thank you all. And
Hey, guys.
waves and saying hello.
Hey, Barb.
Thank you all. And I do want to let everybody know that the full documentary will be on our website. I will do that as soon as we end this Zoom presentation in its whole entirety. So you'll be able to see it there, and it'll be on our YouTube channel. It should already be on there right now, live. I just made it live tonight. For more Northern Kentucky history throughout the week, check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, where you can find the latest Curator's Chat, along with all of our past Northern Kentucky History Hour presentations. Please like and subscribe. That is all that we have time for this evening. Thank you again to all of the sponsors and supporters of BCM. Until next time, everyone, take care and good night. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, gentlemen, again. Thanks, Rex. Same out to you, too. Thank you.
And you're welcome. Thank you.